Welcome, and thank you for being here today as we mourn the death of Karl and celebrate her life. To live in this world, we must accept that someday we will have to die. To love what is alive, we must accept having to lose what we've made precious through our care and our love. To be fully and fiercely human, we must accept having to be breakable and sometimes broken. When we stop to notice how someone else's life gave us a path and a little light to see by, it encourages us to help carry that light forward. Though each of us carries forth in this world only a small flame, we know that the ability of that light to brighten the world depends upon the many others who learn to walk with it in their hearts. I light our chalice with these words for this hour as we remember and celebrate the great light that Karl brought into this world. May this flame remind us of that radiance and the ways in which it made our own lives grow brighter. Please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing our hymn, Spirit of Life. Please be seated. One of the many remarkable things about Carol was the way in which she managed to spend almost her entire life making music and helping others do so. She was able to build a life in which music played a central role. As recently as just a few weeks ago, Carol was able to enjoy playing the piano. To construct a life around music is a great gift, and it was certainly a great gift to all of us as well, the beneficiaries of Carol's music-filled life. As noted in her obituary, in addition to being our music director, Carol was the longtime music director of the Tapestry Choir and the piano accompanist for harmony singers for more than 50 years. She was the piano accompanist for many other local groups as well, including the South Park Theater, Stage 62, the Pittsburgh Savoyards, and Jude Pohl Productions. There are 2 piano pieces being played by family members in today's service. This first, which Adrian will play, is titled A Morning in May and was written by Janine Yeager, one of Carol's favorite piano composers, whose pieces she performed here at Sunny Hill many times over the years. Carol's daughter, Allison, will now read a letter written by Carol's mother on the occasion of Carol's 5th birthday that was included in her baby book.
The family has begun the task of going through the stuff of my mom's house of 60 years. In a dresser in a spare room, my sister found my mother's baby book. But the real find was a letter tucked in the baby book. A letter written by her mother on April 1, 1935, my mom's 5th birthday. If you know my mother, you will recognize this 5-year-old. Now, Carol's baby book must be a closed record. She is 5 years old today. Soon she will be starting in kindergarten. Her hair is darker than her older sister Janice, a rich bronze hue. Her cheeks are very pink, her freckles are prominent. She is fancy and mischievous. Her merry, bright, lovable nature endears her to all. When very young, Caro could sing well. At 4.5 years, she could play by ear on the piano her sister's pieces. She began taking piano lessons 2 months ago and already has played in 2 recitals. She is the gift of absolute pitch, a remarkable sense of rhythm, and an easy keyboard presence. It remains to be seen whether Caro will attain high scholarship. Now at 5, she reads and writes the alphabet, many common words, and numbers to 100. She has sewn her doll quilt. She washes and dries the dishes and tidies up the house with more industry than efficiency. She does not care much for stories or poems and does not commit to memory very easily. Physically, she is perfect in form, posture, and texture of skin. She has always been sturdy and eats heartily. However, she has been addicted to several nervous habits, such as biting her nails, stuttering, and the like. She can be very persistent to the extent of stubbornness, is rather tomboy at play, not as sensitive but more generous than her older sister Janice. With unbounded love, Mother has reproved and advised her second daughter. Already she feels great pride in Carol's character and talent and knows she will have the abundant life.
One of several phrases that jumped out at me from that baby book letter from Carol's mother was this one toward the end. With unbounded love, mother has reproved and advised her second daughter. Reprove is one of those words that you don't hear a whole lot these days. It means to scold or correct, usually gently or with kindly intent. This tendency toward reproving was one that may well have been passed on from Carol's mother to Carol herself. If you were one of Carol's daughters or someone who sang in one of her choirs, you'll almost certainly being corrected, usually gently or with kindly intent. My very first email exchange with Carol took place a few days before I officially came on board as the settled minister here at Sunny Hill. Carol's husband, Russell, had just died, and we were beginning to plan and announce the memorial service that was to take place. In my email, I wrote to Carol, "Is it all right with you if we put an announcement about your husband's death in The Beat this week?" The Beat is our weekly church newsletter. It would be something very brief, something like this. We are sad to announce that Russell Karl, husband of Carol Karl, passed away this week. Arrangements are being made for a memorial service at Sunny Hill on October 4th. More details will be forthcoming. And then I went on in my message, "Is that okay? Do you want all the congregation invited to the memorial service? I hope you're doing as well as possible under this family in my heart." Now, I should note here that I made a typo in this message. Instead of saying, "We are sad to announce the death of Carol's husband," it said, "We are sad, S-A-I-D, to announce it." Carol replied, "Yes, that would be fine. If you want, you can say the time will be 11 o'clock a.m. on October 4th, or just leave as is. However, you will soon learn that I am the resident proofreader, and such typos as 'we are said' instead of 'sad' hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm certainly not finding fault, and I'm sure that it would be corrected in the process of printing it. But it's something of an inside joke, and of course, this is not to say that I never make mistakes also. Thanks for suggesting this announcement. I'm doing quite well so far, mostly thanks to my family, but to others as well." This was the first in a number of reproving communications that I received from Carol over the years. But one thing was clear to me from the very beginning, which was that these corrections really were, for the most part, delivered gently and always almost certainly with kindly intent. These corrections were, I think, Carol's way of showing that she cared about something. Carol's daughter, Adrienne, recently told me that her mom had 3 great passions in her life: family, church, and music, and not necessarily in that order. Carol's kindly intended corrections almost always had something to do with one or more of these 3 great passions: family, church, and music. Of course, all 3 of these passions intersected here at Sunny Hill. Carol was a founding member of this congregation, which was established in 1965. Her interest in establishing a Unitarian Universalist congregation here in the South Hills of Pittsburgh very much had to do with her love of family and her desire for her daughters to be raised in a religiously liberal humanist tradition. And almost immediately after the church's founding, Caro became involved in Sunny Hill's burgeoning music program. She directed the choir here for more than 5 decades, and even as she grew more frail over the past few years, she still loved playing piano here for gathering music on Sunday mornings whenever she could. Music was one of the passions that she shared with her husband Russell, and one that she passed along to her children and grandchildren. So in some ways, music may well have been the most important of these three passions of family, church, and music, inasmuch as music spilled into all of these other aspects of Carol's life in so many ways. In addition to her love of music, family, and Sunny Hill, there are two other things about Carol that I would like to mention. The first is her incredible generosity. Although it's not widely known, for many years, Carol donated back her entire salary, plus more, to the church. And she continued to give at this level even after she transitioned to emeritus status and no longer drew a salary. Carol also made one of the largest gifts the church received in our last capital campaign. But her generosity extended beyond her philanthropic support of this congregation and other causes that she believed in. Carol also had a generosity of spirit that was evident in everything she did, though never in a flashy or ostentatious way. Carol was always quietly generous with her time and attention, in addition to being generous with her talent and treasure. While she probably would not have wanted me to publicly praise her generosity, I believe it is important to acknowledge all of the many things she gave to this church, including providing the lion's share of the funding for our beautiful piano that was purchased for this new sanctuary. People who were born during the Great Depression, as Carol was, can have a tendency to be frugal and to hold on to money pretty tightly. But they are also frequently amazingly generous to the institutions and causes that mean the very most to them. And it was clear from Carol's multidimensional giving to this congregation that Sunny Hill was, in fact, one of her central passions. The other thing, in addition to her generosity, that I would like to emphasize is the extent to which Carol was well and truly loved by this congregation. Longevity of involvement in a church does not always necessarily correlate with a certain level of affection. In other words, just because someone has been a member of a church for a long time does not necessarily mean that they are deeply loved. But Carol was, in fact, deeply loved by those who knew her, including me. Of course, none of us is perfect. We all have our own flaws and foibles, as did Carol. But Karl meant a great deal to this congregation, and I would be hard-pressed to think of someone who was more loved or more cherished than Carol was. People here were just as passionate about Carol as she was about this congregation. It was a mutually beneficial, functionally symbiotic relationship. Not only was Carol a Sunny Hill institution, she was a beloved Sunny Hill institution. Carol made a large enough contribution to the last capital campaign to entitle her naming rights for a room of her choice here at Sunny Hill, though she declined that opportunity. However, others were determined that there really should be some space here at Sunny Hill named in her honor. So members of the choir and Carol's daughters made significant contributions to the building project in order to name our rehearsal room the Karl Choir Room, an honor that she gladly accepted, though she preferred that we call it the choir room rather than the Karl Room. point that I would like to make about Carol's many admirable attributes was her unwavering professionalism. With Carol, there was never any doubt that she would show up on time, that she would be prepared, and that she would do whatever she could to help this congregation not just function or survive, but thrive. In the middle of the COVID shutdown, Carol stepped down as Sunny Hill's music director and became our music director emeritus. During that year or so, when the church was physically shut down and doing services only online, Carol would come into the church once every 3 or 4 weeks so we could record her playing piano solo pieces to include as opening music or offertory in our services. We would edit these pieces into the larger service before streaming it online on Sunday mornings. Much as one might expect, Carol was all business during these recording sessions. She would come in, go straight to the piano, and after maybe a minute or two of warming up, she would be ready to record. Almost always, she required just one take to get it right, a consummate professional to the very end. At our weekly staff meetings here at Sunny Hill, we always start with a check-in, each person sharing about the joys or sorrows that they are experiencing in a given week. Carol's check-ins almost always centered on music, often the last concert that she attended, or family, usually the accomplishments of one grandchild or another of whom she was particularly proud. So I could see each week all three of Carol's great passions at work: music, family, and church. I loved Carol and have been having a hard time imagining Sunny Hill without her, though we will certainly go on. All of us made stronger by Carol's generosity, her professionalism, and her passion for music, family, and church. I hope and pray that we all might be inspired by and learn from Carol's example, and in the words of her mother, her abundant life. May it be so. Amen. Over the last few years, Carol brought in big piles of sheet music that she wanted the choir to sing, giving it to Mary, our current music director. These were pieces that were special to her, a few of which she directed herself. This next piece is one of the last pieces that Carol directed with the choir. Our choir, by the way, today includes not only Sunny Hill members, but also representatives from the Harmony Singers and Tapestry Choir. we're going to open things up for a few minutes. For anyone who feels moved to share a personal memory or story about Carol, to come forward to the microphone and do so briefly. I'd like to start with Carol's family, if there are any family members that have any particular memories or stories to share. Yeah. Anyone else?
Well, this is from Louise Marchionist, who is a longtime member of the choir, and she now lives in Florida. But anyway, she said, "Sending love and appreciation to celebrate Karl. Since Carol's passing, I've been fondly reliving almost 35 wonderful years of music, the music she made and the music we Sunny Hill singers were privileged to make with her. Carol was the ultimate professional, always there, always prepared, always patient and encouraging and helpful and good-spirited. She worked with everyone to make us sound our best. An example stands out. While singing a solo one Sunday, I somehow sang in 3 beats to the measure, despite it being composed in 4. Carol's accompaniment covered it amazingly well, and maybe no one noticed. Afterwards, when I realized my mistake, she just smiled. I loved working with Carol. She was the best. Sending love and appreciation to celebrate Karl's life and memory. When words fail, music speaks." And then I'd just like to say, a week or so ago, Shelley and I went to see Carol, and she was telling us a little story, and she told us about when she was a little girl. It was during the Depression, and I guess her family lost their house, and they were sleeping in 2 tents. I said, "Oh my," and she said, "Oh no, we were very happy." She had a wonderful family, and she loved her brother and sister. And so even in the Depression, this made Carol could be happy. Also, very determined woman, always had a stick shift. Wasn't doing any of those automatic transmissions, not for our Carol. And what a woman, her whole life she had a handicap. But boy, could she communicate.
Hi, I'm Ellen Johnson, and I wanted to just talk about the award that she received from the Pennsylvania Federation of Music Clubs. The award was, she knew about it back about a month and a half ago, and it was awarded on last Friday in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I will give this to Adrian. For her service in the state of Pennsylvania, her musical contributions, both to the community and to the club of which she was a member. You have heard all about her contributions to the community from the Reverend Legal here, but I'm talking about now her contributions to the club, which was the Pittsburgh Piano Teachers. She was a member forever. More importantly, she was a member of she was the treasurer, and it makes me, I thought that story about from her own mother, that she was good with numbers. She could count to 100 when she was 5, and there you go. She was a treasurer for 22 years for the Pittsburgh Piano Teachers. So she was on the board, and I was on the board for a short period of time, and all her reports were always, of course, very accurate. She also helped the treasurer who took over the job from her, just remembers how generous she was with her time and showing her the way that she did things, although she always would say, "But you do it whatever way is best." And Cindy said, her way was the best. She was also the composition competition chairman for a few years, and the girl who took that job over said she was very helpful in helping her transition to that. And Carol apparently was a composition, she composed music herself. For the Federation also sponsors a piano festival for piano students every year, and we hold it in the South Hills. There's a couple of them in Pittsburgh. And sometime we were having trouble. You need a lot of volunteers that day. It's a day-long event. The kids just play for an evaluation. It is not a competition. And I asked her if she would do the theory testing that day and just sit in the room and grade levels 1 through 12 theory tests. I had no idea she was 86. This was 2016 because she was Carol and it seemed like she could do anything. And she agreed to do that for the afternoon. And for 5 years, she always graded theory tests. The last one being in March of 2020 when we held the festival one day after the state lockdown. And, you know, she was just somebody who was always ready to jump in when it's time to stop. And on a personal note, I must say that she and I started playing duo piano in 2004 and played for 15 years. We would just start practicing in August. We'd pick the pieces, and she would come to my house because I had 2 pianos, and we would perform at the Pittsburgh Piano Teachers December recital. And it was always a big challenge to learn these pieces because you had your own piano. It wasn't like a duet where you might only have either the upper part or the bass part. We also performed at my own student recital in December. That was kind of like a practice in front of all these kids that I taught, you know, and so we would see, are we ready for this? And that went on until 2019 when, you know, we had to stop playing in person. So I will always remember those days of practicing because that's the fun part, and that's the part that I think Carol enjoyed too, just getting together and playing with each other. And I don't remember, I know she also had a great sense of rhythm. There was one time we had a piece that she liked by James Rocco. I think he's an American composer, but the rhythm was incredibly difficult because her part was different from mine, and so we had to, I just had a lot of trouble with that. But she never said a word. It was always, we can do this. So Carol was truly a special lady, and I think she's affected a lot of people during her long life. And we must continue her legacy and try to inspire others. Thank you.
Hi, I'm the geek on the videos. My name is Bob Lee, and when we first got to Pittsburgh, we were looking for a church to go to, and the first service that we went to was a coming-of-age service, which there'll be one tomorrow. But Carol was playing for the kids there, and my kids were all trying to learn some instrument, and it was interesting. And she came back over and she talked to me afterwards because my daughters had talked to her and my son was talking to her, and we just felt like this was going to be the place we wanted to be at. And in the first, I'd say 3 or 4 months, the minister there would put out a order of service, and if you looked carefully at the songs that were going to be sung, there was usually some irony or sense of humor, and I cannot for the life of me remember one exactly, But I remember my wife and I laughing till we were crying in the car on the way home and saying, "Do you think Kirk had any idea?" If you go back in history and you look at them, maybe you'll find one, but thank you.
Okay, hold on a second. John and then Paul.
Hi, I'm John. I'm Judy Armstrong's husband. I have two very brief memories of Carol. Judy sang in the Tapestry Choir, and one winter they were performing at Asbury Heights, and I would always try to go to hear them sing at least one performance. And Carol was a little bit late, but she showed up in a car, her stick shift, with a flat tire. I don't know how far she had driven, but I offered to go out and wait for AAA, but the tire was shredded. But she was determined to get there. The other memory is when this piano arrived, I was coordinating with the piano company to deliver it, and I kept in touch with Carol about when it was coming. So the day that it was arriving, I told Carol, and she came, and she sat in right here where her family is sitting, with a book of Chopin on her lap, and watched as they assembled the piano, which used to be stage left. She waited until they had completely assembled the piano, set it up, and left the room, and until I had left the room, but I hadn't really left the room, I was in the back. She got up and sat down at the piano and played some piece of Chopin, and being the cheeky guy that I am, I recorded a little bit of it. But that was Carol.
I'm Paul Lawson. I'm one of the newer choir members, 7.5 years. Throughout the history of humanity, people have asked, what's the secret, the key to long life? In my limited witness of your great Karl, I think it was never mentally retiring, maintaining a sense of purpose until your last breath. And two quick things on that. One was, despite her age, she maintained a very fresh sense of music. She had a very broad sense and never, unlike my mom, music was very dear to her too. My mom was trapped by her certain era. Carol was not. And that music witnessed to people, even in her last days in the hospital. The other part was that, and my wife and I both noticed this, Carol used the opportunity in my ear of COVID, which was a horrible thing, to get even more in touch with her spirit. And the piano playing that I heard her do after COVID was some of the best I'd ever heard her play, a combination of mind and heart. And so I can say that to honor Carol, mind and heart, and always keep going, always find a new purpose, always grow.
My name is Rachel Beam, and when I first came to Sunny Hill about 7 years ago, after being first warmly greeted by Bethany Thornton and Dennis Sweeney, I was next very warmly welcomed by Karl, who spoke immediately to my diva soprano heartstrings and said, "Come and sing with us." And so for the next few years, I had the privilege of doing just that and being directed by her in the choir. And always found myself in awe and reverence of her incredible talent, her perfect pitch, which never ceased to amaze me, and continued to be in awe and reverence of the courage that it must have taken to start a new church, this church, and proud to be a member and briefly serving in tenure as leadership, and I hope that we can continue her legacy and make her proud. Thanks.
Any others? Come on, Shelley.
Well, my husband and I were not founding members. We've been here a long, long time. From when Carol's choir, when we didn't have a building, we didn't have a home. And over the years, from being in the choir, Carol encouraged me to join Harmony Singers, which I was in for over 25 years. She also encouraged Tapestry Choir, which is a daytime small women's group that performed in nursing homes and various community things. And at one point in my life, I was taking piano lessons from her, trying to, recover some childhood memory of playing the piano. So I was seeing Carol like 4 days a week. And every one of them was wonderful.
Thank you for all those memories and stories. We will have a reception after the service ends in a few minutes where we'll continue to share thoughts and memories and stories about Carol in various ways. There was one more quick thought that I had that I want to make sure I share today, which was when I did my very first sermon here. I had not yet been voted on as the settled minister. It was one of my candidating sermons. And in the middle of that sermon, I had embedded a hymn that I sang one verse of a cappella, that then at the end of the sermon, everyone joined in with. I really put my heart and soul into that sermon, into every element of that service. And after it was over, Carol came up to me, and the one thing she said was, "You were exactly on pitch with that." Nothing about the lofty thoughts or the great intellectual prowess that I brought to bear. But that was beautiful, and it was the beginning of a really beautiful friendship and professional relationship over the past 10 years. Carol's daughter, Adrienne, and granddaughter, Liz, will now perform a piano duet, Peconic Bay. This is a piece that Adrienne played with her mom here at Sunny Hill, I think just last year sometime. In a few minutes, I hope you will join us for a reception in our fellowship hall as we share more stories and memories about Carol. There's also a collection of Karl memorabilia right across the hall from the sanctuary in the Karl choir room, and I encourage you to take a look at that. The choir will have the final word in this service as they sing Carol's arrangement of How Can I Keep From Singing. As the choir will attest, Carol was constantly arranging and rearranging choir pieces. Virtually every piece of sheet music in some way by Carol. As the choir assembles, I will offer these words by way of benediction. Let us honor the life of Karl by living ourselves more nobly and lovingly in the days ahead. As you return to the routines of your lives, go in peace, and may an abiding peace go with you. Thank you so much to the choir for putting those beautiful pieces together without much advance notice. It was just beautiful. And now we will go on to the reception. I hope that you'll stay with us as we go out and share more memories of Carol. Go in peace.